so glad you are back for another episode. And today I have a guest with me, Miss Toni Will, who has 25 years experience in leadership. She started in banking and now serves as the general manager and the governor for the Kalamazoo K-Wings, a men's AA professional hockey team in the ECHL in Kalamazoo, Michigan. She's been in that position for the last 10 years, and Toni is the first GM to serve on the board of governors in the ECHL. And the Kalamazoo K-Wings have won several awards under her leadership, which is amazing. In addition to her career in professional hockey, Toni launched her lifestyle coaching business, Mindfulness Elevated, in 2021, and she helps offer freedom of substances for reaching fitness and nutrition goals for individuals. And in 2023, Toni expanded her business to include professional development coaching with Toni Will Coaching. She is passionate about helping emerging leaders and entrepreneurs break through their own glass ceilings. And in 2024, she launched Women in ... You get to fill in the blank. And that is a podcast that celebrates women in all walks of life and the people in their lives who are filling them up and shaping them into the person they are today. I was blessed to be able to be on her podcast, and it was a wonderful, wonderful episode. She's such a gracious host. And today I'm returning that. I wanted to have her on our podcast, and Toni resides in Kalamazoo, Michigan with her husband, Josh, and their 3 young children, Grace, Landon, and Chloe. All right, you guys, here we go. All right, Miss Toni, thank you for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I was just sharing with my audience your bio and just the incredible things that you've accomplished, that you've been a part of. And I'm so glad I get to share you today with them because you have such a unique story beyond just your bio. And this is where we get to dive in and get to know you a little bit more.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. I listened to your podcast episode, most recent one, and I thought it was fantastic. So I'm excited to be a guest and get to know you even better than I already do.
Yeah. All right. So in your own words, who are you?
That is a big question. I like it. That's hard. I would tell you right now, this week, I'm reading a book called Likeable Badass. So I highly recommend it. It's by Allison Fergale, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. So I think that's what I am this week, or working towards being, right? But that's, I guess, one of the identities. I'm a wife, I'm a mom. I, as you heard in my bio, I'm a GM of a men's AA professional hockey team. I live alcohol free, and that's one of the big identities I wear and where I spend a lot of my space in. I'm a daughter and a sister and all those things. So there's so many different identities that I wear as a woman in 2024.
Yeah. I know it's interesting how there's so many facets to all of our lives, and our lives couldn't have happened any other way than how they've happened this far. And one thing I'm discovering is I've needed all of that in my past to bring me to who I am today. You know how sometimes people try to silo parts of their life, and I'm like at this point where I'm like, all of it is needed. And yeah, so for you, what are some of those pivotal points in your life that have happened that have led you to where you are right now? Because you have some pretty monumental things in your path. I'd love for you to share.
Yeah. So some of the most pivotal moments for me have been, personally, I went through a divorce when I was 29. My kids at the time were 4 and 1. That was a big, I would call, fork in the road in my life. At that age, at least for me, I thought I knew who I was. I was on the doorstep of turning 30. I was a mom. So I felt like I should be in a like I'm grown, right? I have a mortgage. Like I have all these things. But hindsight's always 2020. I was really stepping into my 30s that would end up being I don't even know what the word for it is. Controlled chaos, maybe? Two words. But stepping into my 30s and making a lot of mistakes, but also having a lot of successes, and which has aided me in my 40s. So, I go through this divorce and my relationship with alcohol ramps up. That's where I crossed, in my opinion, the line of demarcation from I take it or leave it drinker to coping with alcohol. And I was from a Catholic family, and my ex-husband is also Catholic. He was one of seven. My brother-in-law married us. He's a Catholic priest. He baptized our children. This was a big deal for me and I was the one that initiated the divorce. And it wasn't for anything monstrous. It wasn't like anyone cheated or there was abuse or anything like that. I just wasn't happy. And that didn't seem like a good enough reason, but um, spoiler alert, it was the exact right thing for me to do. And because I can say that now at 46 years old. So that was one big shift, but it was till my mid 30s where it took me a while to question my relationship with alcohol. I was really what I'd call asleep in this. It wasn't denial. I thought it was what everyone did. And when I really started to question it, that was a point in my life where at least for me, I got on, am I an alcoholic? Right. It was one path in terms of back then, like, do I have a problem with drinking? And if you do, you must label yourself this. And that was uncomfortable for me, but that's what I did for a period of time. I went to AA, I went to meetings, I got involved in all things, and I was sober for 15 months. Um, and and then I decided this wasn't for me. So I went back out, and in the middle of all of that, I remarried. Um, and that marriage lasted 11 years, but I started this career in pro sports. I was also doing endurance racing like triathlons and Ironmans and marathons and all this stuff. So on the outside, I look wildly like successful. And it's not that I wasn't, but it's like the iceberg. It's just the tip of the iceberg, what's underneath. And so, I was struggling with these things. Um, so I really struggled with my relationship with alcohol. My second marriage ended in 2018. A lot of shame with that, my second marriage. So I'm two divorces in and I'm 40 years old and I had a lot of shame there. Um, and yet my career was still taking off in pro hockey. Um, and then the pandemic hits and I decide I really want to look at my relationship with alcohol again because we didn't play hockey that season because of the restrictions in Michigan. And so I decided to focus on me and I took another stab at stopping drinking, but with a totally different methodology and found other resources that were more modern. And that was as of October 12th, 4 years ago, that I had stopped drinking. I launched my own business from there to help other people do the same, called Mindfulness Elevated. That spawned into Toni Will coaching, where I do professional development coaching too for people looking to make career change or start their own business. And then from there, I launched a podcast, all still women in to lift women up, which you were a guest on, all while running the hockey team still to this day. So, and I got remarried in there for a third time. Never thought I would do. So it's a very long answer, but yeah, there's been a lot
Yeah.
I packed in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. I think it's like we get to choose our life, right? Like we have, like with the shame and all the judgment, and usually it's our own judgment of what we think people think, and giving other people a voice that really maybe shouldn't have a voice in our life. And so I really commend you, like, to have the courage to just go through all that and just keep going and keep finding your way. Cause I think sometimes we settle, right? Like you said, your first marriage, it was like, not like there was anything extreme going on, you know? And so what
like, what was that like for you? Let's start with your first, like, marriage. What was it like for you, like, in your mind's eye or in your like, where were you at? What did that feel like in your body? What gave you? Because some people don't they can't it's like they feel like they feel paralyzed to even make a decision that big to do it. So what do you think was within you that allowed you to go through that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I get asked these like, where does the courage come from? Basically, the conversation you and I are having. This is where I talk to my clients about it's a lot of things in our lives are very personality driven, right? And so it's understand now this is me with hindsight answering this question. 29-year-old Tony, I had it in me. Like I follow the short answer is I followed my gut instinct,
Mhm.
but knowing how I'm hardwired and that I'm a rebel, and so I'm high courage to begin with, and I'm okay with standing out either good or bad. Um, and just know like, literally in my body, knowing that there was more for me. It's this inner knowing, just like
Mhm.
my relationship with alcohol. It was an inner knowing and really listening to that and saying, "Okay, am I willing to step into the fear?" And answering those questions. Um, like, what does that look like? And just taking that first step, having the hard conversations. I think part of it is truly saying it out loud.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, I will never forget the conversation with my first husband where I said these words, "I'm not happy." And his response was, "I know you're not." Right? And so I said the words and from there, once I just made that first step that was not motion, because motion is like just thinking about it. Action was doing something and understanding the difference between the 2. It's like, okay, I took action. My personality is very action oriented. And so I understand that about myself. But I have to watch that because there's a difference between being impulsive and being intentional. And that's wisdom speaking though, because 29-year-old Tony did not have that wisdom. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so you're a bold individual. So, what if someone is like, "I just don't have that courage. I don't have that boldness." Like, are there steps they can take? What do you recommend for them to get support? Because like you said, you went to AA, that worked for you for a while, and then you're like, like, what are some other options maybe that you've discovered along the way that other people can, look into?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about this day and age, 2024 versus 2008, when I went through my first divorce, although social media was certainly like starting to be on the rise back then, but there are support groups like everywhere on social media. And specifically, I'm middle aged. So Facebook is a great place for me still for, our generation. But I found great resources out in that. Like when I found This Naked Mind, which I highly recommend that book if you have not read it by any grace. This is all about a different way to look at your relationship with alcohol. So I go on Facebook, I find this group and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I just found this treasure trove of like-minded people." Right? And that changed my whole trajectory on where I headed with my relationship with alcohol. So it's like maybe there's a like this is totally different. This didn't happen to me, but I have a client that I'm working with where her husband literally abandoned her and which is terrible, but he literally left in the middle of the night, never came back.
Oh my
There is
god.
yeah, there's a Facebook group called Abandoned Wives.
Wow.
Went through something similar. So I say this, my mom is dying of Alzheimer's. There are Alzheimer's and dementia specific groups. So what this does is the first thing is I'm not alone. And you don't have to tell anyone you're doing that. You know what I mean? So it's not feel like you're stepping into courage in a different way because you're taking action. You might connect these, you might just read other people's stories and that helps, right? Like, so it's okay to do something without like posting on your social media, "Hi, I'm unhappy," and, like, that's a whole different level.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so great because I wouldn't have thought of that, but Yeah, finding people that are going through similar things and finding your tribe is, I mean, that's so liberating and helpful
It
in
is.
anything.
Yeah, and it'll lead you down this path. Like, for instance, a lot of people would think in that scenario, and I did this. I went to a therapist. That didn't work for me, but once I found a coach, and you and I both coach, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, that made a difference. Like coaching is about looking through the windshield, where therapy is about looking in the rearview mirror. And coaching for me worked, right? And so that's another thing I would encourage, because you can just tell that one person, your coach, right? And help work on this stuff. So I would also go back to this notion of growth mindset versus closed mindset or fixed mindset.
Mm.
And ask yourself, do I have a growth mindset? People would like to think they do, but it's really important to evaluate that stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, and earlier we were talking about those SPECT imaging scans that they do at the Amen clinics. And speaking of growth mindset, I consider myself somebody who is a very growth mindset oriented. And what was interesting is when I did my scan years ago, one of the I scored low in two areas. Fixed thinking or flexible thinking. So I was more fixed thinking. I scored the lowest. And the second one was social and with others. And that was 5 or 6 years ago. So the beautiful thing about our brain is we can mold a new brain at any point of our lives, and we're not stuck with the brain that we have. And sometimes our brain is addicted to sugar, addicted to alcohol, anxiety driven, depressed brain, PTSD brain, and you name it. But this is where we get to shift into brain health versus, I call it brain health, not mental health. It's a brain health thing. And we get to figure out what's going on within us. Um, but the first step, I think, is to recognize that things aren't quite right here. What are, like, maybe somebody's having a few drinks here and there. Like, how do you define or how do you say, maybe you should look at taking this out? Like, what would somebody be seeing in their life or experiencing, that alcohol is stepping in and actually hindering them more than helping them?
yeah. So first off, what I'm obsessed all things on this topic, which you and I were talking about off air too, like alcohol, brain health, it's all connected. Um, anyone, and I want to make this clear, anyone can get addicted to alcohol. And by that, I mean, anyone who ingests it, you're on a spectrum, right? And so I was like, it's light gray all the way to, dark gray. I was in the dark gray area, like, alcohol use disorder territory. And when you're at that stage, I went from bottles to boxes to blackouts. And that's literally what my progression was in my 30s. And then I stopped, this last time at 42, stopped drinking. Um, so I was way over here. If you're not watching this, I'm on this make believe spectrum. But there are people that are take it or leave it drinkers,
Mhm.
right? But that doesn't mean you can't consistently drink more over time and not get addicted. You can get addicted at any age if you're ingesting alcohol, because what you're doing is you're slowly rewiring the reward center, the pleasure center of your brain. And so I just say that so people have that knowledge, because it's not just if you grew up in a home with someone who drank too much or alcoholism. And I also like to point this out. Alcoholic and alcoholism are not correct medical terms anymore. It is alcohol use disorder. Those are not recognized by the CDC. And so only a small percentage are actually physically addicted to alcohol, because there's a physical addiction and then there's emotional addiction. And most people have an emotional addiction. So I just want to put all that out there. There is a difference. Um, so in terms of like, how do you know? Well, it really is up to the individual. You could drink once a week and be like, I don't like my relationship with alcohol. Right? Or you can be like me and thank God, how many blackouts did I have this month? Or how many hangovers did I have this month? Like, that's not, I don't think that's normal. Right?
Mhm.
And start to, because it's not like this going to the doctor and getting, it's not like a broken bone where you get an x-ray and they're like, yep, your arm's broken, because it's a self diagnosis. You get to decide. So it really starts with, am I uncomfortable with this? And then I would also say, do a exercise on what I would call mindful drinking. How many times did I mindlessly drink? A lot, right? Mindlessly means I don't know how many I had or how often, or I'm just ballpark guessing. But if mindfully drink and we write down what we're drinking, what time, for what reason, and then if we have another drink, what time, and you start to track this, you can see where the patterns emerge. Like, is it always on Fridays? Is it always Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Is it, and if you start to be mindful about it and track it, what was it Peter Drucker said? What gets tracked, what gets managed gets changed. So I would encourage people to just mindfully drink and see what that looks like. Um, I will end with this. Like, there are things that I know I can take or leave. If you told me I could never have coffee again, I'd be like, okay, caffeine's addictive, right? But I would be like, all right, I'll just have hot lemon water or something. But if you were to say to me 4.5 years ago, Tony, you cannot have Kendall Jackson Chardonnay, I would say a lot of swear words. So that's kind of an indicator too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now what about, because I hear this a lot, and actually this actually happened to me. I don't really drink. Once in a while I have like a drink, but it's like, yeah. And then even now, my husband's 2 months sober, so I like literally don't drink. And um the last time I went to a party, I mean, it was like an adult grown get together. I think party, I think college days. Woo woo. And you're in Michigan. Western Michigan University is right around the block from you. So you're like taking me back a little bit. Um, but I went and I drove there and I just was like, I'm not gonna drink. Like, it wasn't, I just whatever. But it was interesting. A grown man came up to, because they had like drinks and they were giving them out. And by the way, this was like a Halloween party, so they had like these vials of drinks, like potions or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, no, thank you." And he was like, "What do you mean?" Like, and it like he like got like emotionally and was like, "Oh my gosh, like what, like why are you not drinking?" And I'm like sitting there just in silence, like looking at this grown man peer pressuring me as a 40-something-year-old woman to drink. And what was wonderful is his wife came up beside him and she's like, dude, leave her alone. It was so interesting because one thing I do hear and I see is that other people are uncomfortable when you say you're not drinking and they want to push you to drink. Do you notice that with your clients? I mean, is that, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a very honest, transparent person. I was that person at one point, the guy you're talking about. And you know why? Because I was uncomfortable with my relationship with alcohol. So I see someone like you saying, I'm not going to drink tonight. I don't even know how to begin to attempt to be you. And that was like looking in a mirror. And by that, I mean, wow, good for her. But I can't even imagine not drinking. And I have some envy. So that's I was that I was that person. And I'm not proud of that, but I was, because I couldn't imagine going to a Halloween party and being alcohol free or sober, whatever language someone wants to use, and enjoying myself.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. So what do you do to those when people are like that? What do you recommend to your clients now?
Well, again, this is going to come back to personality. So, what I recommend is, before going to an event and knowing full well that you're not planning on drinking. First off, make a firm decision. So by that, I mean, like if you're a maybe, I might drink, guess what's going to happen?
Oh, I've done that before. Got pretty real tipsy.
Yep. But you've also gone into situations where you're like, I'm not drinking tonight because I'm driving home, and you made that firm decision, right? So first off, before you even get your foot on the doorstep, make a firm decision. Now, when someone like that gentleman or old Tony, which my nickname back in the day was Tony Party Time, comes up to you and starts, this is so true. And I used to hate it, but it's because I felt self-conscious, right? And pressures you to drink. This is where practicing beforehand comes in to it. It's helpful. Now people are like, really? And I'm like, yeah, say it in the mirror, say it out, get the words out of your mouth. Like, oh, I'm driving tonight. No, thanks. Or, for me at this stage, I would say I cashed in all my drink tickets. I don't drink anymore. Like I make it light because, I'm not trying to put this person on the defensive. And my guess, and there's a lot of assumptions I have to make, but he's probably 1, 2, 3, 4 drinks in already. Right. So there's that. But I'm like, cashed all my drink tickets and I'm good. Using some humor, something light. Or another pro tip, have a red Solo cup or a cup that is, you can't see what's in it because who cares what's in your cup, and just, oh, I'm good. I already have a drink.
Yeah.
And there could be water in it.
Yeah, that's good. I sometimes will just get sparkling water with lemon and lime twist and have them put it in like a nice glass. And then nobody even says anything because they're like, oh yeah, you already have a drink, and it's just like then I don't have to even, deal with it or whatever. But
100%. And there's so many like alcohol-free beers now. Like people don't take the time to really look at the label to know that it's alcohol-free. They just see you have that, So that's often a good move. It's like, I already have something. Or if he's handing out shots, like even back in my drinking days, there were times where I didn't do shots. Like I don't do shots. So yeah, but I would say practice it. Make a firm decision and say it in the mirror, even though you feel goofy, just because you sound really cool in your head. But when you're trying to say it,
yeah. We all sound great in our minds sometimes.
oh yeah, and then this happened to me. You try to spit it out, and because I get asked this question about going out to eat, and when everyone's ordering drinks, and this is like one of your first times, and you're like, what do I say? Everyone's staring at me, and I said, practice it at home because I've done this and I didn't practice it, and I was like all tongue twisted, and then I felt shameful, and I managed to get through it, but it was uncomfortable.
Mm. All right. So you went from all that stuff to stepping into now you're helping people live this alcohol-free life. And how is it that you work with people? Like, what is it that you're doing with them to support them through this journey?
Yeah. So one of the first things with my clients, so my business is called Mindfulness Elevated. And the reason I named it that, I like to just preface this because there's a lot of intention behind why I did this, was I'm very passionate about mindfulness. I think it is a true tool to really understand yourself and be in the present moment. Like right now, I'm with Dr. Anna Marie. Is just so fabulous to connect with her. I'm not thinking about a meeting I had an hour ago. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing an hour from now. I'm here, right? Because we often do that in our arms, right? And there's a lot of different arms to mindfulness, right? So I'm passionate about mindfulness. And then the elevated was like, how do we take it to the next level? And the biggest part of this is when you shrink those two initials down, it spells the word me. And that is the number one reason I stopped drinking, was for me. Because I knew if I stopped drinking, I would be better in every identity I opened up with at the beginning of the podcast. So what I do with my clients, I coach clients that are in any stage of their relationship with alcohol, even if they want to reduce drinking and not completely eliminate it. Because one, I'm very much all about inclusivity. But there were stages in my drinking career where I reduced significantly, but our society culture tells us, oh, you're still drinking, so you still must have a problem, or these are the beliefs in my own head, limiting beliefs. But reduction is huge too. Generally, when we get on the reduction path, we start to pull ourselves out of denial a little bit. We test drive, we experiment what it's like to do some events or some of a part of our lives not drinking. And then we're thinking, this isn't as bad as I thought. Maybe I'm ready to go all the way. Right. So I coach to reduction as well. So really, I say to my clients, wave a magic wand. What version of yourself do you want to be? If I could help you get anywhere. And then we go from there. So I start with our first session is always um, make a list of why you drink and why you don't want to drink. And that's where and then everything else from there we jump off. And I like my client, we meet weekly, and I like them to bring me their day to day in the sense that let's tackle life as life is happening. And I have a lot of different tools and learning. I read my age every year, so I'm a very deep well. So I can recommend podcast. I listen to my age every year too. So I have podcasts, I have books, I have I'm kind of known for giving homework. Yeah. So that's what we do in Mindfulness Elevated. I've had so many wonderful success stories. I just got a text, gosh, last week from one of my clients who just celebrated 3 years of being alcohol free. I have a client that I just met with yesterday that lost 14 pounds and stopped drinking in the last 3 months. I mean, so it's everything in between.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think too, like some people may not even realize that there's people like you out there. Like we hear a lot about life coaches and business coaches and therapy and counselors and like all this. But it's so refreshing and wonderful that there is very specific coaching and mentoring that can take place. And I love that you've been through it. Yeah. Nothing against coaches that coach to things like business coaching and they've never had a business. You know what I mean? Like, eh, I commend you on that because it's just like so refreshing to have people that go through the real walks of life, the ups and the downs. And it's usually through those downs where we get to show up and really help people because, hey, sister, I have been there. Here's my hand. If you need to crawl up on my back, I get it. Like, I am here to help pull you up because if I can do it, you can do it.
Uh,
And
Hands down. Yeah, I mean, I will coach to things that I have experience in, and I completely agree with you. There are coaches, well, and that's quite frankly why I didn't like therapy, and I'm not against it. Actually think both can exist. But I went to so many therapists that didn't understand my struggle with alcohol. So I feel like that's why coaching was effective to me because my coach at the time, he drank his face off too. So right? Like, he got me, right? I coach men and women because a lot of coaches in this space, especially women, it's very female dominated. There are male coaches, but fewer, which is a whole gender thing because it's harder for a man to be like, I don't like my relationship with alcohol. It like takes their male power away. I just had a podcast guest on that shared that story with me. Anyway, so yeah, I have walked in their shoes and yeah, they're coaches like me that do exist. And I coach people all over the world and which is really great about technology because it allows me to do that. And yeah, I do exist and it's so rewarding and I love it so much. I love seeing people become the best versions of themselves.
yeah. All right. I want to shift gears a little bit. We're gonna talk about this whole thing of you being a general manager for a men's professional hockey team. That's kind of like a big deal. Did you even get there? Like, I mean, did you play hockey? What? I mean, I know you're a leader and you do, I mean, you lead. So, how did this come about?
On accident. No, I didn't play hockey. Uh, So I grew up, I'm born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Southwest Michigan. As you know, because you and I both graduated from Western Michigan University, but didn't know each other
I'm
back in the day. But we get to meet each other at a much better place in life, probably.
100%. I would have been your party sidekick, just getting wasted. That would have been me for sure. Yeah,
We would have gotten a lot of trouble together.
for 100%. I always say, thank God there wasn't smartphones back then because I did the really stupid stuff.
Same, same. Uh, so I grew up here in Kalamazoo. I actually, I graduated from Western. I got started my career in banking. I had a business management degree. I worked in banking for 13 years, kind of worked my way up through retail management. It opened a door for me to work at Southwest Michigan First, which is not a bank. It sounds like a bank name, but it's our economic development arm in Kalamazoo where we create jobs. The Chamber of Commerce came calling and asked me if I would be interested in running that. It was a giant leap of faith. So again, this courage uh, theme is weaved into my kind of my whole life, professionally and personally. I took the leap of faith. I loved what I did externally for the chamber, but the internal culture was toxic to say the least. The CEO that was there at the time, this was 13, 14 years ago, is no longer there. But I left. High courage. I was in my mid 30s. I didn't have a job. I had a mortgage. I had 3 kids.
Mm.
And I was like, I'll figure it out. And I applied to be so at the Radisson, which is like the marquee hotel downtown Kalamazoo, they had this high-end fashion boutique because I wanted to be a fashion designer when I was young.
You just keep surprising me with all your things. And wait a second. Okay, this is my squirrel going on. Did I read correctly that you have Guinness Book of World Records something?
Yeah, the Kalamazoo Wings, I led my staff and the Wings to 2 Guinness World Records.
Oh my gosh, you are so fun.
I had the craziest bio.
So what was that in?
So 2019, we set the Guinness World Record for the largest lightsaber battle on Star Wars night.
Oh my gosh.
These are actual Guinness World Records. And then just a month ago, on October 19th, we set the Guinness World Record for the most waving foam fingers at our home opener.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Okay. Okay. So Radisson, high fashion. You wanted to be a fashion designer.
But I couldn't sew. So then I just shopped, right? And there's this boutique in there called Sydney at the time. It's no longer there. It's a Starbucks now, but I would go in there, shop on sale only. And they were looking for a store manager. And I thought, this is perfect. I can step back. I don't have to have a public facing job in Kalamazoo. My kids were younger at the time. I wanted less responsibility. So I applied. And they called me and they're like, Toni, because they all knew me already. It's Kalamazoo's smallest town. They're like, "You're gonna be bored." And I'm like, "I know." And they're like, "No, if you're bored, you're gonna leave." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I wanna be bored. And I don't want a bunch of responsibility. I don't wanna be the face of anything." And they're like, I don't know. We'll call you back." Okay. And by the way, I just want to put this out there. I don't have a money tree in my backyard. Like the clock was ticking. Like
Yeah.
I needed a job. This wasn't like me just flitting around figuring out what's next. And so they called me back and I'll never forget this day. HR calls me. They said, "Toni, we think we have the perfect job for you." I'm like, "Okay, I'm all ears." And they said, the Kalamazoo Wings. And I go, "The hockey team?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I go, "It's still around?" And she goes, "That's why we want you to run it." I'm like, "Why? I don't know shit about hockey." That was our literal conversation. And she laughed. I go, "I'm not trying to be funny, but serious." And she said, that we don't want someone that knows hockey. We want someone that knows how to run a business, that knows how to build a culture with front office staff, that knows how to sell, that can lead a team, a front office team, not the hockey team, and loves Kalamazoo. And I stopped for a second, like, "Oh, I guess I am all those things." And then she told me how much the pay was. I laughed. My pro sports is not a lucrative business, y'all. It was a 35% pay cut from where I was at. And so of course I said, let me, put it in writing, the usual things you do. And I thought about it and I thought, you know what? Let's do it. And it is the best job I never knew I wanted.
Mm.
So that's how I got into, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I just 3 weeks ago gave my TED talk on that. So I talked about being a minority in sports because being a female GM, there's less than a handful of us in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, it is it is and it's not like I walked into Wings Event Center in the winter of 2015, kicked down the door, ripped my bra off, set it on fire, and yelled, "Woman, hear me roar."
Yeah.
That's not all what happened. I
Yeah.
It took me a couple years to look up and think, "Oh my god, I have some work to do here for women in sports." And so for the last of the 10 years I've been there, the last 8 years, I've really been beating the drum on lifting women in sports up and speaking publicly about it, both the positives and a lot of challenges. I
Mhm.
guess by traditional standards, I have broke the glass ceiling in terms of being the first female to be on the executive committee for the board of governors in the league that we play in. Um, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And so that's why I launched a podcast to lift other women up. I have men and women on my podcast called Women In and and that's why I have the dots, not just in sports, but in any
Mm.
area. And I created a women in sports mentor mentee program. I've created a quarterly meeting for our league for women in sports. I have a book study for women in sports. And these are things I just do for servant leadership because I'm so passionate about that too.
Yeah. That's just an incredible story. And I know your story is just going to keep getting more and more incredible. One thing that I think we all need to remember is, you know, we talked earlier about shame and stuff in our life, in our past, but I feel like when we don't leave the lessons behind, we take the lessons with us, like, and we take our whole self and our whole experience. People recognize people that have done stuff, that have been through stuff, that, you know, like, people saw that in you, right? They didn't have to know all the ins and outs of your story, but they saw a strength in you. They saw some things you used to do, and they're like, "Hey, let's insert you here." And you're like, "Wait, what? What?" And I think sometimes we get this idea in our head that our life is supposed to look a certain way, and we don't remain open to the universe and to what the world is bringing to us, and we miss opportunities. And everything is in hindsight, and I know that I've missed opportunities in my past because of my blinders up, but I really try now in my life to keep my blinders down. What's open, right? And I'm open to receive anything that's for the highest good of all. And so I think it's incredible that you're like, "Oh yeah, I am all those things. Okay, let's do this thing." Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And the fact that you're like, "I don't know what I'm doing here," but you stepped into it and started to create and started to collaborate and started to, you know, bring everybody up who is around you is like, wow, that's that's incredible.
I had to, I got asked, and this was a big part of my TED talk because actually, and it hasn't been released yet. So it, as far as I know, it'll be up on the TED platform late 2024, early 2025, because they have to do a bunch of stuff to get it approved. But I talked about both the things that we've talked about today. I talked about my alcohol-free journey, and I talked about my being a minority in sports and how I did these things. And actually, I talked about sports first and then the alcohol second. But I talked about the how, because that's the most important thing. Like if I'm going to help someone, I'm like, okay, it's great, Tony, you have this great story. Um, but how did you do it? Because I want other people to learn. So when I was asked this years ago, I sat down because I didn't know it's what's called unconscious competence. And
Mhm.
so I sat down at my desk and on a yellow post-it note, and this was before I was going to go speak at Western because they asked me to come speak to a class. And I thought, well, how did I turn the hockey team around? I don't know. And so I wrote down 6 things and they became my leadership pillars. And I kept that post-it note in my purse for a long time. And so every so often I go speak somewhere and I pull it out and I talk about these things. And then one day I'm like, oh, maybe I can apply this stuff to my personal life. And that's how I stopped drinking. So those 6 leadership pillars really became really my framework for tackling anything in my life, and helping others figure out how to do it too. So I'll just tell you what they are real quick.
I'm dying inside. I need to know this.
Yeah. So number one is go to the experts.
Mm.
Okay. So
Say that again, please.
go to the experts.
Like, seriously, I don't know what my problem used to be. I thought I had to do everything on my own. And it is like life changing to find individuals that are experts that even if they're only 10% ahead of me, it's like, I need you because I need that extra 10% edge. So, yes to that 1,000 times. I'm glad that's your first one.
Yeah. And what I love what you're saying there, Anne-Marie, is that it is even 10% ahead of you. And it's a version of asking for help, but you can say, go to the experts. So go to the experts. Number two, innovate. So what that means is make it your own. So in like the AA space, I'm like, I kick an anonymous to the curb. Okay. I'm kicking the word alcoholic to the curb. I'm alcohol free and I'm talking about it. Right. So I changed it. So that's just that was the Tony way. So I innovate. Uh, Number three, make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. I celebrate them. I think we grow from them because they're painful,
Yeah,
you know?
100%.
Number four, this is personality driven. Ask for permission or ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah. That's probably why we get along so well. Yeah. So this is like, this is me being like, listen, no is a complete sentence. I don't have to explain to you why I don't drink. Right? Like, I just don't. I don't wanna go to your event, or I mean, sometimes I do, but there are things that I just don't wanna do, and that's just one example. Or,
Mhm.
we do a rainbow ice game every year in hockey, and that's all about inclusivity, right? And celebrating all diversities, right? And so it's, controversial, and that's okay. So number 5, macro manage. So, holding things loosely, right? Like, nobody likes to be micromanaged. Nobody likes to be controlled. So how can we hold things loosely? This is very much about the culture that I am passionate about with my staff, and then in my business, like I hold it loosely. It's just if you can suffocate the life out of things if you hold on and you try to control.
Yeah. You know what? Speaking of that, I had a client come in and I recommended that she find a coach. And I'm a coach. And so, I mean, I say the word coach. I'm not really a coach. I'm like, I don't know. I got to figure out a better word for it. But it, um, I was just like, yeah, I really think you should get someone to help you future minded working on that. She's like, I have, and I've interviewed a few people, and she's like, and I'm like, okay, well, have you not found? She's like, well, I really found one person I really like, but like, you have to sign this huge contract, and there's all these rules, and like going on and on. And she owns a business. I mean, I think she's grown her business over $10 million right now.
Wow.
And so it's like so she's looking at these coaches, and the thing that is getting in the way of her working with somebody is literally that they're holding things so tightly, right? Like we all need boundaries, right? And you're a mom. I mean, being a mom, being a business owner, you can't. When we do that, it's like life happens. And so I love that you said that. I love all your pillars, and I can't wait for your TED talk to come out. And
I'm
oh my gosh.
when I stood well, let me tell you 2 things. Number 1, the 6 pillars, have fun. That's as adults, I think we forget sometimes to have fun. So, and it's part like I just love to laugh and have fun and not take myself too seriously. So that's number
Yeah.
6. But so standing on that red dot was an amazing experience and it went well, I think. But when you're in that, it's like out of body. So I can't wait to because I
Oh
got
my gosh. It's on my bucket list. TED talk.
you're gonna do it. Oh, I did. I released a podcast on it. You'll have to listen. Just
Yeah. I know. I actually kind of want to bring you back on the podcast. I'm thinking out loud here. Just like to dive into each pillar. eat
Oh,
more
yeah.
than 6 pillars because I mean, I just love it. I think it's so great, and the innovate part, when I think of innovation, I just think of, like, just being authentic. If everybody just showed up in their own unique, authentic way, like, oh my gosh, how beautiful would this world be?
I amen, sister, because if we could all just take our masks off, and I'll tell you that the thing that I was most ashamed of was my relationship with alcohol. I'm the most proud of now. Uh, I never thought I would turn it into a business and help other people. I was always so ashamed of being married for three times, but my marriage now to my husband, we've been married almost 5 years, is just so healthy and strong, and it is a true partnership. So to melt that shame away, it's because because I choose to talk about it, right? And really just the sky isn't falling if people find out that Tony Will isn't perfect.
Yeah.
I am not.
You're like, "Before we get into this relationship, I just want you to know I'm not perfect.
I'm a mess.
I'm a I'm a perfect mess."
I'm right where I'm supposed to be, but I'm a little messy right now.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Okay, can you please share with everyone, where they can find you, where they could connect with you, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so if you're a hockey fan and you wanna see all things hockey, the Kalamazoo Wings is at kwings.com. And then my coaching business is Toni Will Coaching. That's my professional development coaching. So if you're kind of in the space where you wanna change careers, like completely go into a different business like I did, or you wanna start your own business, that I help on that side. And then, mindfulnesselevated.com is where my, lifestyle coaching business is. And then I'm on all social media platforms, LinkedIn and Facebook at Toni Lentini Will, and Instagram at I'm Toni Will. So I'm not hard to find. And I love connecting with people, truly. Like I see a lot of people that just don't reach out. Reach out. Because these connections we make are just, they're so valuable, and for lots of reasons. So please connect.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Tony, so much.
Thanks for having me.